Today, we're going to be talking about why we don't take action towards our goals. Have you ever considered why you're not taking those actions? You want to write that book that you've always imagined. You want to break out and start your own practice, or you want to change practice areas. You want to tell your spouse that maybe you're not as happy as they might think that you are. Why is it that we don't do any of those things? For most of the women that I work with and most of the people that I know, it's because we have this secret fear of failure. We're afraid of how we're going to feel if that book gets rejected by every editor or if our solo practice tanks. We realize that we hate this new practice area after all, or if your spouse decides to leave you after you share your truth with them. We're afraid of all of those things happening, all of those failures occurring as a result of us taking action towards our goal. So instead of taking any action, we sort of sit here, dream about those goals, and beat ourselves up for not taking any action on them. So, given that this fear of failure is standing in the way of so many of our dreams and preventing us from honoring ourselves, I think it makes a lot of sense for us to dig into this idea of failure and see what this thing is all about. If you put what is failure into your magical Google box, you're going to get all sorts of really interesting feedback. For instance, Wikipedia tells me that failure is the state or condition of not meeting a desired or intended objective and may be viewed as the opposite of success. If you go down that internet rabbit hole, you might also stumble across this definition from success.com. It says, failure is caused by lack of persistence, lack of conviction, rationalization, poor self-esteem, etc. So when we put all this together, it seems to me that the reason we're not writing that next Harry Potter series or asking for that big promotion is because we're afraid we won't be successful in that endeavor, that we won't meet the desired result or objective. So, as I said, instead of trying and failing, we choose to fail in this very moment. Rather than try and not achieve the desired result, we're not trying and still not achieving the desired result. Do you see that it's certainly possible that we will fail in either event? But in one instance, we're actually taking authentic action towards that goal and possibly failing. And in the second, we're just failing without doing anything. We're feeling terrible without actually doing anything. To go back to those definitions from the internet, we are lacking persistence, lacking conviction, rationalizing our limited action, and we're operating from poor self esteem. We are failing in this moment and feeling all the crappy feelings that come with that lack of action without having doing anything. We could act and feel all of that, or we could not act and feel all of it now. Rather than taking the chance and failing in the future, we're not taking the chance and failing now. And it doesn't feel any different than it would if we actually moved forward and engage in some real action and experience real failure. We are failing ahead of time. At the same time, we're really robbing ourselves of the different emotions that would accompany those steps toward the goal, those actions that might precede a real failure. If we started taking action and we started moving closer to that goal, we might feel some excitement. We might feel inspired. We might feel motivated. And then, if our action is met with no success, then we might feel failure. We might feel disappointment. But at least we had a little bit of yin and yang in that. We had some good feelings along the way. And then we were met with failure, and that feels terrible. Instead, we're just feeling terrible and robbing ourselves of the opportunity to experience any of those positive emotions in furtherance of our goal. It's craziness. So we have to really kind of explore, like, what is the big deal with this concept of failure and why do we let it keep us from our goals? What I want to show you today is that failure is not a big deal unless and until you choose to make it a big deal, until we decide what it means to us and what it means about us. Failing is simply not meeting your desired objective. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you can't achieve your dreams. It doesn't mean anything until you ascribe a meaning to it and have thoughts about it. That's where the real power is. When we choose what we want to make those failures mean, those choices are going to generate feelings about our action, about that goal, and about ourselves. For many of us, when we take action and that action is met with failure, we make it mean something even greater and more horrible about ourselves. Instead of just being disappointed that it didn't pan out, we take that failure and say, well, I'm just not good enough. I don't have what it takes. This is never going to work out for me. That was a silly dream. People are going to make fun of me. People are judging me. All of those things are choices that we make about that failure. They are thoughts and sentences that we are choosing to believe following that failure. That creates even more negative and terrible and horrible emotion if we act and fail. We control that. We don't have to make that failure mean anything about us. We are choosing to believe all of these things that make fear something so much bigger and failure something so much more significant in our lives. And it allows that fear to paralyze us and keep us from taking any action towards that goal. Henry Ford famously said, failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. He knew that every single time you fail, you learn how to not do something. You learn something about yourself. You learn something about the process. You might even learn that you no longer even want that goal. Fearing failure is nothing more than being afraid to learn and grow. What's more, fearing failure is not forcing you to really challenge those thoughts that you have when something doesn't go well. It doesn't force you to look at those thoughts and say, you know what, maybe it doesn't mean I can't do it. Like maybe just because I failed in this instance, it doesn't mean I'm not good enough. But if you don't go through the motions and force yourself to fail following action, you never have to confront those negative thoughts about yourselves. And they just kind of sit there in the background and continue to haunt us in other ways of our life. Think about it this way. If someone were to say to you, I'm going to win the next gold medal at the Olympics on my first try, and I'm never going to lose any race on my way to the top, you would think that they were absolutely insane because logically, we know that failure is a precursor to great success. However, in here, in our hearts, we really struggle with embracing that rationale, with accepting that, yes, failure is part of my path to achieving this goal. And it's not always going to feel great, but it doesn't have to feel horrendous because I make it mean all of these other things. We have to start giving some rational grace to ourselves and embracing our own awareness that failure is simply part of the game. In order to achieve your goals, you're going to have to get comfortable with failure and treat those failures as simply getting you one step closer to that goal. If you want to do something, if you have a dream or a goal, or even just a conversation that you want to have, we can't be afraid to take that action and learn from that experience. We can't anticipate that failure and plan on how we'll make that failure mean something even more horrible about ourselves. It doesn't have to mean anything about you. In fact, that failure truly means nothing in and of itself until we have a thought about it. Most of us are choosing really terrible thoughts about that failure. Instead, we can choose to believe, okay, that didn't work out. I'm going to keep trying something else until, as Henry Ford said, like I learn more ways to not get there. Eventually, I'll find the right one. You never know. That first step, that first action, you might be one of those 1 in a million that writes Harry Potter right out of the gate. You don't know. And you rob yourself of that even possibility by not taking action and failing in the moment. We have to let that go. We have to be open to the possibility that maybe it will play out. Our brain wants to tell us that it's absolutely not going to work out, and that keeps us stuck and it keeps us paralyzed. But let's be open to the possibility, like maybe it will work out. Maybe on my second try or my third try or my 1,000th try, it'll work out. If we knew that and we bought into that possibility, we would be taking action left and right because we knew that somewhere around that next try, somewhere around that next action, it was all going to come together. That possibility exists, but we have to start taking action towards it. I am a huge believer that we all have to commit to failing regularly, not even in big ways. Ask someone on a date, ask for a ridiculous discount, try a new workout class, pick up a new language, ask for a raise. Whatever it is that makes you uncomfortable and brings up those worried, fear-based thoughts and self-judgments, that's the work that we need to be doing, because that shows us there's some fear in there that's keeping us from acting in alignment with who we want to be. That means there's work there, there's evolution there. And those are the steps that we need to let that fear guide us and say, there's something here for me to learn. There's something here that I need to do for myself, for my own growth, so that I can see what comes up for me when I do the scary things. If the only thing is holding you back is the fear about how you'll feel if you don't achieve it or if it doesn't pan out, you are allowing your life to be dominated by fear of failure. That is a choice. We don't have to be afraid of that. We can embrace it and see every failure as one more stepping stone closer to your goal. We can embrace every single one of those failures as a badge of honor, because the more you fail, the better you are going to know how to actually do it right, how to actually succeed. In the end, fear only hurts if you make it mean something negative, if you allow space for those thoughts and self judgments to come from that fear. It could simply mean that didn't work out. I'm going to try something else. We can shut down the thinking there and keep going and keep experimenting. I tell my clients all the time that we need to be massively failing and taking massive action in furtherance of our goals. And we take all of those fruits from those failures and we use those to build the life of our dreams. When we look at it from that perspective, failure is necessary. Failure is essential. Failure gives us the building blocks to build that dream. Having an uncomfortable dream means being willing to fail and knowing that you can think about those failures however you want, positive or negative. In the end, your progress is going to largely be driven by what you want to make those failures mean and whether or not you let that fear of failure keep you from acting at all and failing in this moment.